The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Today's guest and their company are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial. All right, well, thanks for doing this.
Yes.
All right, so Jessica, for people who don't really know you yet, how would you describe what you do and your business?
So my business is called Behold Breath and Soul Coaching, and that really is the aim of it, is for people to come to like stillness and awe and just be able to be in an environment with themselves that's aligned, body, mind, spirit. And so that Behold is just kind of a focal point on the Lord and letting His voice be your number one voice. How I get there is through, we all have information, right? And we all know a lot these days. We get more and more, but as far as the practical aspects of getting that and allowing space for people. So what I say is really giving people an environment for that alignment to happen with some tools and strategies and neuroscience and all these things that we know, that giving people a partnered journey in that and helping them to really have that time where they learn how to do it and can practice that with partnership, and not just, here's this great information, now go do it, and you're kind of left just feeling uncertain about how to move forward. So breath techniques, mindset techniques, and a lot of combination of those kind of things to help people find stillness and really become whole and not, so kind of unstuck mindset patterns and anxiety it helps with, all kinds of things like that. So, yeah.
So as for the makeup of your client list, is it generally female?
Generally female. I've had some male breath clients, so I do a 6-week breath coaching, course one-on-one with people, and that has been both male and female. And then I'm in a longer 6-month coaching program right now with a client, and I'm developing that program, and that I would say is more geared toward female. Just we go deeper into mindsets and things like that, where I think both the client and myself would feel more comfortable with female. But I've had professional counselors take my course, and also athletic competitors, and so various motives, people come, and I would say 9.9 out of 10 of my clients have had just really great results and have found something that they can grab hold of and move forward. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So what did your life look like before you started moving into this space?
Yeah, so I have actually been in kind of ministry circles most of my life, either with nonprofit work or in the church, and kind of parallel in that was dealing with aging parents. And so things got really challenging when I was serving people all the time and caring for not only my 3 kids, but my parents as well, and just their age. They declined in age and health and passed away and managed estate, and so was just really in a season of complete and utter overwhelm. And really was having a challenge, almost kind of reconciling, like, do I have enough faith for this, or what's my problem, or I'm doing everything I know to do, but it's still, I just feel like I'm stuck and I'm trapped and I don't know where to go with any of this. I'd seen counselors and was asking for help, from my church family and in different ways, and it felt like I was kind of at an impasse of not knowing exactly where to go. And so this was born out of just my own personal journey of needing help, not knowing where to get it, and then realizing kind of halfway through the process, man, this is just mind-blowing information, and if I could help somebody else with this, then that would be phenomenal. So it just kind of was born out of my own story and me learning how to truly rest, how to really balance my nervous system, come into alignment and trust myself with knowing that I could discern the voice of God. I could walk forward in truth, and I was going to have feelings, but what to do with those and not let them rule, but also not just push them aside and say, oh, those don't matter. That was what I kind of received a lot, unfortunately, in my circles was set those feelings aside. That's not going to serve us right now. Kind of stick to the work, and you're serving God and you're living life and you're doing it. Just stick with that. And it's like, I'm broken, man. I've got to do something different. So
it seemed like there was a really big shift, like maybe 10 or 20 years ago, where it went from like, you're not allowed to have emotions.
Right.
Or, oh, well, if you're feeling that, then there's something wrong with you, kind of a deal. And I think that maybe in the last 10 years, there's been way more acceptance around, hey, I'm struggling with this. I actually need to work on this. This is something that does mean something. This is something that I do need help with, and have accessible options.
Absolutely.
I mean, in this area, I would say like there's a lot of areas around the country where that's not something that's really talked about. It's not really discussed, or maybe there's just not great options around that market or community. And so it's really cool that you're doing that in kind of a space where usually people think of, well, you're going to struggle there.
Yes.
Or you're going to find somewhere else.
Right.
But just having something like here that can actually help them deal with those things.
Yeah, very true.
And you answered it a bit, but what were you personally wrestling with? Was it more emotional? Was it physical? What did that kind of manifest and look like for you?
Yeah, through this work, I really feel like I was disconnected from my body, which may sound strange. I did a lot of work through the Enneagram as well, did yoga certification, did breathwork certification, and just started learning a lot about the mind-body connection. And I think I had learned through whatever system that whatever I felt it needed to be set aside, and I just needed to push through. So it was a lot of striving, a lot of the weight of responsibility, and now through some of these techniques and just the practice of stillness and knowing how to do that, being able to move forward in confidence and not have to wait on expectations of other people or let somebody else's version of what my responsibility and my role was, take precedence over what I knew it to be, where I became kind of the boss of my own of my own mind and body, which seems silly, but it's just like we just don't realize how much we do because we think that's what we need to do or because that's what other people are telling us to do. So I would say it was a combination of physical, mental, spiritual. It was a lot of work in all those areas, and it kind of coming together is where really where the secret sauce or whatever is, where it's like I can now be still enough to learn I need to rest today, or this is what I need to do today, and then move forward in confidence in that. Some days are going to be, I'm like a superhero getting it all done. Some days I need to take a nap and go walk in nature, and that's going to be okay. And the rest of it is going to happen when it needs to happen, and just being able to kind of go with the ebb and flow of life a little bit, and trust myself with that, and not have to listen to the other voices that think they know about my life better than me.
Yeah.
So,
There's a stand-up comedian who has a pretty good bit, and it was like, he's like, I thought I was polite. It turned out I just had anxiety. And it was like, you kind of do so much to go out of your way. Like, you're kind of like dying a little bit inside, just like trying to do make sure you're not an inconvenience. Make sure that you're living in the way that other people think you should be. Versus, oh, no, that's, other people aren't thinking like that. But, that is something that you do have to kind of overcome.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, there is, we can, in the pursuit of trusting ourselves, you can go too far with that and think, I'm the only one that matters, the phrase like be true to yourself and all that, but you can't do that only. Like, you still have to be a human being that's kind and compassionate, considerate to other people. And so there was really a point, really probably the point where I thought, this is not going to work like this anymore. It was a conversation with a family member after the passing of one of my family members, and something dawned on me and something clicked in that moment where I was like, I got to do something different. And so it was learning some about boundaries as well, but then kind of going myself, taking the pendulum a little too far on that as well, and thinking, well, my boundaries are not about affecting everything you do. It's me and my. So if this environment is not healthy for me, I don't have the right to change that environment for you. I need to work about my systems in that environment. And like, if I need to leave early, or if I need to give myself an out, then that's something I have the right to do, but I can't make you fit what I need, if that makes sense, you know? So, man, just lots of learning. Lots of learning.
So what did that process look like? Were you kind of becoming this a little more balanced version? You kind of allowing that pendulum to kind of swing back to where you feeling more of a true and authentic version of what you need to be?
Yeah, I think time is a lot of that, and a lot of reading. I read a lot of books. One of my favorite is The Sacred Enneagram, and I got away in 2023 to a little Airbnb for 2 or 3 days, and really I read that book, and I read a couple of other things that allowed me to start becoming aware of who I was, and not just aware of it, but grateful for it, and realizing I'm created this way. I'm not messed up, but here's how I can grow through that towards a healthier version of myself. Yeah. And so I had done, I briefly mentioned it before, but the yoga teacher training. So I became certified in yoga, and that was an Eastern yoga training. And so there were some things that I was like, oh, this is not what I want to spend my time doing. So I'd kind of work through those requirements, but I made it through that, and then it caused me to go into Yoga Faith, which is a Christ-centered yoga training. So I did that, and learned just how all of these pieces, you know, because Scripture says everything made is, you know, of God, in God. You know, Christ is through Him and for Him and all of that. So I believe that that is, like, everything is acceptable, but where's your focus in it? So I did the Yoga Faith, and then that really led me to the breathwork coaching certification. And so because I noticed there was a situation with one of my children who will remain nameless, and I usually react fairly strongly. And with this situation, I just noticed myself being really level-headed. I was like, this is different. What changed? And I was in all of those trainings where I was doing breath work a lot of hours a day, essentially. And it caused me to really know for fact that there was something to this. And so after that, it became more about, you know, being trauma sensitive, doing a lot of trauma awareness certifications, and I'm actually doing a new one right now called Sozo and Somatics training. So just kind of keeping learning, seeing what applies to my own practice, what applies to a client, you know, curriculum, and then kind of going from there. So a lot of work, a lot of stillness, and now in developing this business, it's been interesting because it's kind of taken it to a different level where I can't just sit and do all the things that are serving me, right? Like, I'm building a business, and so I'm now, okay, I have to do this today for myself, and then I have to do this today to develop my business, and then I have to do this today to take care of my family. And so learning how to put more of those things in equal balance rather than only serving others all the time. Yeah. And not listening to myself and what I need. So taking time each morning and really being still and going through some prompts and listening to myself and trusting myself.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. What surprised you most about something that could be so simple? So something like breath work, something like a yoga.
Yeah.
What was just that kind of moment like, okay, it seems like a basic element of just being a human.
Right.
What was something that maybe kind of stuck out to you?
You know, it's just the fact that we really overcomplicate things as humans. And when you go back, we think our whole world is so filled with information, but it's kind of back to that. If I don't practice this, then knowing it in my head is going to do no good. And so knowing the information and doing it are two different things. And so I myself, after that more intense season of learning, I wasn't practicing as much, and I you know, see myself becoming more agitated. And so really giving the value to the basics, it does seem counterintuitive, but it's just like, that's the way it is. And it's kind of like in school, if you don't learn your ABCs and your 1 + 2 is 3, then all the other more challenging stuff is going to be harder. And we want to rush the process and get to the bigger, better stuff, and we deny ourselves some of those simple things. So it is crazy, but also too, what I've learned is the partnership is key. Like you being able to work with me on it to move forward, where when you doubt yourself or you have questions about it, that's what I'm there for. It's not just putting you out on an island and making you learn about it all on your own. You know, learning about it with people and in community is a huge piece, so that we don't forget that the basics are where the value comes. So
I think there's a driving back to kind of things like that, like a partnership. There's so many services, there's so many how-to guides, there's so much information out there, and now like when we kind of cloister ourselves and try and do it on our own, you can. I mean, you can white knuckle it for sure, I'm sure, but when you actually have someone around you, someone to actually help you, someone to coach you, it's just, it's not just more efficient, it actually feels like you're a part of something. Just something I found.
Yes, very true, I agree.
Moment with a client or yourself that you realize it works.
Yeah, so I kind of chatted a little bit about myself. There was a really incredible moment with my client currently, and we had done some of the scientific part and learning about it, and then we put it into practice this one day, and she told me really in that moment that she was just like, this is the first time where I've been on my own and I've been able to hear from God, separate from church, separate from worship music, where that moment and talking through these prompts and having balanced her nervous system through the breath, she just felt very personal, like very close with her relationship with God. And I just thought that this is why, this matters. I had another client who was a very early client, and so I've learned a lot since then, but she would take things to fall asleep every night, and she got off all of that after learning some of the breath works that really put you into a sleep mode, I'll say. So just it's very practical, it's very spiritual, it's all of it in one. So yeah.
Awesome. So kind of as you kind of said earlier, you do work quite a bit with women. You've already had in the past. What are some patterns that you keep seeing, maybe across either genders of clients or just that you've kind of been seeing a lot?
So we don't know how to take care of ourselves, and the term self-care is frequently used these days, which is great, but I think there's still perhaps a misconception of what self-care is.
It still sounds indulgent for whatever reason.
It still sounds indulgent. And then I think people make it about indulgence. And they're like, well, I don't have money enough to take care of myself. Well, so taking care of yourself might be a pedicure or a manicure or a massage. A massage is more along the lines, but it's also taking a walk in the park with no technology and being able to be in stillness and being able to reset, your nervous system in that way. So I think with women and particularly some men I've found, but we think taking care of ourselves is selfish, and we don't understand. I remember it being an airplane that, the first time and thinking, why would I ever put the oxygen mask on myself first? I don't get it. You would obviously do that for the other person. So we just have this mentality of serving others but we miss the part that we're not going to be able to do that well long term if we don't take care of ourselves. And we have to learn how to take care of ourselves, and it's not going to be the same exact way that I do it. And so I want to help you discern the best way you can take care of yourself. And so that's why we talk through all kinds of the different ways. But it's that acceptance that I am a human being, and I need care for myself, and I'm worth it. Like, kind of comes back to that identity piece, is I'm worth the care that it takes to nurture myself. And that's not going to happen even if we're married by our spouse. Like, that's too much responsibility to put on your husband to find all of your value in his opinion of you, right? Or your children's opinion of you, or your coworkers. You know, I think we can tend to do that, where that's why we serve. We're people pleasers. We don't want to create conflict. We want to help other people. Those are great things, but if that's our only motive, then we're going to fall short, and we're going to burn out, and we're going to be confused how and why we got there. And so building those systems of routinely taking care of yourselves is just, it has to be there, especially as we enter middle age, you know. So that's probably more of the clients that I'm drawn towards too, is maybe you've even had a loss, so maybe in transition or in grief, you are experiencing burnout, or maybe you've been in the same corporate job for 20 years and you're just like, I don't know if I can do it anymore.
Right.
Some of these tools can really reset that and help you to learn to listen to yourself and love yourself.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we kind of make our lives smaller in a way, kind of as just like a general people, we're putting more emphasis on all of those things. Like, you didn't used to look for everything from your job, or from your spouse. You had friend groups, you had church, you had organizations that you were a part of, and so you got to kind of like spread that out. And as you kind of make yourself essentially lonelier, you do kind of put more of these systems like, why isn't this working anymore, and needing more of what you're offering, for sure. I'm sure. Okay, so when women come to you feeling they feel stuck, they feel anxious, what's kind of the first things to get them kind of moving forward?
Well, I think letting people know that they're not alone in that, because I know in my season I really truly felt very isolated. I felt like nobody understood where I was coming from. Now I know that's not the truth, that many people feel very similar even in their own set of circumstances. So I think letting people know they're not alone, and then giving them quickly, that's why the breath work is so good, because it's just it's an immediate thing. And now we know it's getting out there more about breath work and how to do it. There's a physiological piece that I teach that is really, it makes a difference. So you can't just go look up something online and it necessarily be what you need, and it's not necessarily going to serve that purpose. So I caution kind of against just randomly looking something up and thinking, you know, I'm going to take that practice and do it. That's why I'm available. But yeah, the breath work really helps immediate, and then that we've got to feel safe. We have to feel safe, and the breath work helps to initiate and create that safety, so that then you can accept truth and apply it. But if you're functioning out of your, survival mode, then you're gonna reject truth without even knowing that's what you're doing. And I think that for me is a lot of the biggest difference, is creating a safe environment, allowing my nervous system to be aligned, then applying truth, and then working on how to partner those yourself through, your own systems, your own, requirements for yourself. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Why do you think that there's so many capable men, women out there that are struggling with confidence and taking care of themselves?
Oh man.
You are supposed to have the answer for all society.
All of society. Yes. No, I really, and I still struggle with it. I've seen growth in myself for sure on it, but I think a lot of it is we think we are the be all end all, and we should have all the answers for everybody in every situation at all times. And we don't have realistic expectations. And I think a lot of that comes with overperforming and people pleasing and depending on the world out there to meet our needs, when really that all has to happen internally. Like your confidence, your value, it has to come from within, not be met by anybody out there. And I could get on a phone technology tangent, and we're thankful for services like phones and technology that allow this to take place, but we really do. We're looking at other people's success stories and things like that, not realizing the damage it does to ourself over long term.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of comparison, things like that. And we see somebody being successful, we think, oh, I could never do that. You're not meant to do that. You're meant to write your own story, And so I think we don't take time to listen to what we need to be doing. So we want to copy what other people are doing. That doesn't work, and then we feel a disconnect there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answered the question.
No,
but
that was great.
yeah.
I have a whole next page about getting on tangents about social media, so it's great.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so kind of breaking down breath work,
Mm-hmm.
working on things like that. Someone hears breath work. What's the simplest way that you can describe what you're doing?
So there is it is a physiological pattern of breath. So like an adjustment to your anatomy to breathe in a certain way that brings balance into your nervous system. So a lot of it is about the vagus nerve, the vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve, and it basically promotes relaxation or stimulation. And so, the vagus nerve really promotes the relaxation, the parasympathetic nervous system. And so that's what is going to be, calming you down. But there's a lot of techniques that we just go through in the breath course that we teach the foundation, and then a lot of different breaths to use in different scenarios. And I kind of like I've heard it used, but that the breath is like the remote control to the body. So if you want it to do one thing, you do a certain kind of breath to do that thing. If you want it to do something else, then you use your breath to help it to do something else. And so essentially we're guiding our body to do what we want it to do, rather than letting it, like forcing our body. So like you get up, and you need to get up, but you're tired and you're groggy, you need to go exercise, but you're like, oh, I don't feel like it. So then you don't exercise, and then your heart rate isn't up that day, and then you just kind of feel the rest of your day sluggish. Well, there's a breath that can help prompt you before you go exercise to want to exercise, because it's going to wake up your nervous system. So yeah, there's just breaths for many different kinds of activities that's going to help you. So like if you're going into a meeting, you probably don't need the one that's amping you up, because maybe it's stressful. You need the one that's going to bring balance. So
would you say that's kind of a way of helping you not necessarily say my feelings about this don't matter? So like, I don't feel like working out, I don't feel like being active right now, I don't feel like returning that email. It's more of allowing you to be more in control of them.
You're in charge, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of taking back that ownership of your mind, because we can go too far and say, I don't feel like it, I'm not going to do it, that's not for me today. But if you look at what the results that's going to produce, is that plugging into the person you want to become? If you want to be different than you are in that given moment, there are ways that you can, kind of help yourself. Then I think too, what that does is it allows you, giving yourself permission to have time though, to not always have to be on. So like learning how to train your mind to be on when it needs to be on, but then setting aside time where, okay, now I'm going to come into a time where I'm going to listen to myself and deregulate, so that you aren't always wanting to be on, right? Like you want variability, just like you want heart rate variability, you want breath variability, you want lifestyle variability. We don't really want consistency like we think we do, because it just leads to complacency, I think, too. So
what would be a common misunderstanding of what you do, or what you're teaching?
Yeah, so I would say, and I've had this comment before, that, anything outside of what you already understand could be labeled as, you know, woo-woo is the best way to, just kind of out there, like new age or something like that. And I've wrestled a lot with it myself. I have worked throughout this whole couple of years in my trainings to really align it all back with, in my life, the Word of God, and what does the Word say, and really accessing freedom as well, and knowing that just because I don't understand it doesn't mean I can't learn about it. And then if you learn about it and it's not for you, that's totally fine. There's no pressure there. There's compassion. There's understanding. But I know that I've tried a lot of things that just made it worse. So, what's the worst that could happen, really, if someone wants to start it out? If you start something like this and you're like, that's not for me. I have a clause in my paperwork that says if you discern that this is not for you, or if I discern that maybe you need professional counseling, maybe your condition is that this is not going to be the best fit for you, then we both have that, permission to kind of not continue if it's not for you. So yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, so kind of getting into some identity kind of healing stuff like that. How do you help people kind of separate their worth from their productivity, or from what they're doing at that moment? So how do you get them away from that, hey, I'm needing some time for me, but not thinking, well, I just laid on a couch for 2 or 3 hours, I'm now worthless and terrible and feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be kind of my kind of framing. So how do you separate that from people?
Yeah. So what was the original, from identity, from productivity?
Just like identity, healing, just kind of whatever it needs to.
Yeah. So it's very interesting perspective, and our perception. It has so much to do with all of it. And if you are allowed to explore what you really need on the inside, so I have in my 6-month program, I go through phases. So the first phase is awareness, really coaching through how to become self-aware. The second phase is permission, where now that you're aware of yourself, you're going to give yourself permission for that. And this is the very short description. The third is compassion. And so kind of coming back to that, I'm a human and I have needs, and I'm not a robot, right? Like I should not expect myself to do everything I think I need to do. And then we get into curiosity, where we play around with, what does it look like to play more? What does it look like to take a nap? What does it look like to start maybe, at training for a marathon? If that, what does it look like to do some of these things that might take you from your immediate comforts to stretching you just a little bit? And then we go into trust, and then ultimately transformation. But I think teaching people that they can trust themselves with their own decisions is a huge part of it. And so that you really don't even have to answer to your boss. I mean, you do, but you can learn how to work with any given scenario, and learn how to communicate better about yourself. I have a client right now who honestly thought they might not want to stay at the job they've been at because it was just too stressful. And we've talked about a lot of the complications of that job, and we've really broken it down to misplaced responsibility and how women essentially overdo that people pleasing. And so, it's like you're taking on too much, and that's why you're exhausted all the time. You're putting more responsibility on you than even your boss is putting on you. And so that is giving you a false identity of, I have to overperform. And so if you understand what's really within your realm of capacity and responsibility, then gosh, you can take a nap on a Saturday and it's fine. Or maybe you have a flexible job and you're not going to be productive on Monday morning. You either decide to go exercise and get your heart rate up, or you take a nap, but either one of those is okay, that you're in charge, of that. And so, yeah, just working through kind of each scenario that somebody's got and listening to their story too. I think truly listening to your story and your needs, is going to help give you that confidence. So to move forward. Yeah.
Any client stories that changed how you either parent, how you lead, how you interact with others from kind of working with them?
Change how I parent or lead. Well, this is not going to answer your question at all, but there was a client story who just, this person is a trained professional in their field, and they were already familiar with breath work, but they were actually kind of using a popular breath pattern in kind of an incorrect time of day, and it was actually promoting their lack of productivity, and they thought they were doing a good thing for themselves because they were doing breath work, but it was a deregulating breath first thing in the morning, so it was kind of having them have a slow start to the day. Again, did not answer the exact question, but that's why this work is, you need somebody to walk alongside you with it. But as far as my work in general has helped me be a better parent. So not necessarily a client story, but just my kids have gone through a significant amount of loss, and they've lost all their grandparents and some close friends to different situations. And so, I'm gonna get teary. But my daughter in particular, I've been able to work with her with some of the breath things, and we went out to meet up with a family who had experienced a loss that affected her. And after that, bless her heart, she had to go directly to a school activity, and she was needing some time for herself, but that wasn't available. And so on the car ride home, they live out of town a little bit, and so on the car ride home, she got real amped up and basically having a panic attack as I was driving her home. And I was able to see her where she was, not try to be like, you need to get it together. You need to get it together because you've got this thing that for school, and not that that's how I normally would parent, but we panic as parents and think we have to just get them to the next thing, right? And I thought, okay, how in the world do I do this while I'm driving, because I need to get her to this thing. And so we put on some worship music, and then I said, lay your chair back, and this is what I'm going to do. And I just led her, as I was driving, I led her through some of the breath work patterns, and was just putting words, so that she could think on something while doing the activity. It really calmed her system. And it took a good while because she was pretty amped up. But by the time we got to the event, she was able to get out. She'd cried, she'd let it go, and then she saw a friend and hugged and went on about it. But validating people's emotions first and foremost, and then giving them a practical tool. Because if you want to overcorrect somebody, and that's what I feel like I've done a lot previous to this in my parenting, was just, no, get it right. No, this is not how you need to be. And that's what was, done to me a little bit extra by my parents or family members or whatever, was, no, you need to be this way. It's that's not going to want me to change. I've got to want to change from the inside out. And so I've got to be nurtured and validated before I can move on. And so learning how to actually do that with others is huge. And it would have helped me a lot in ministry, because in ministry too, I was at my church for 10 years, and I would kind of just want to get them to the next point, well, you're doing this, it's not serving you, stop it. Right? And then that, you're going to Starbucks every day and you can't pay your mortgage, well, stop getting the Starbucks drink. Sure. Then you can pay your mortgage, duh. But okay, yeah. So why do you think you need the Starbucks drink?
What's the human?
What is the human? Yeah. What do you do? Anyway, and so just there's a reason why we all do what we do.
Yeah.
And if that is not validated or nurtured, we won't be able to like hear the steps forward in order to grow in truth. There's just a lot, and I think that's starting to come out more in mainstream as far as not overvaluing emotions, but if you don't pay attention to some of these things, unprocessed trauma, different things like that, it really is what leads to complex PTSD. A lot of autoimmune diseases are your body not knowing how to deal with it because it wasn't processed. They're even coming out, my mom had Alzheimer's, and they're coming out with a lot of information about that's undealt with trauma, unemotionally processed trauma, because you block your brain off from the pain and it doesn't allow those synapses to fire and to continue, and so they deaden, and that's what creates some of those plaques. And there's a lot, I mean, food and everything else comes into play, but that's one of my motivations is I want to process my emotions so that I can be healthier long term and maybe not have Alzheimer's like everybody in my family did. So
wow. Okay, what is something that people don't need to fix about themselves but always think they do?
Oh man, I think some of these things go back to what do you want out of your life? And if you are measuring your life against someone else's and that's your motivation for fixing it, might not need to address that. But if I want to become a marathon runner, then I'm probably going to need to watch what I eat. I'm probably going to need to do a training program. But if I want to be a writer, then I may or may not need to train for a marathon. Like, I think we just get our paths crossed and confused a lot, and we want to run everybody's race instead of our race. And so, I have to ask myself, even with my own business development, what am I in a rush for on some of my processes that I'm still creating? Who am I trying to prove this to, that I can do it? And so I would just ask what the motivation is. Before fixing something, what is the motivation? Is it because you truly have been made aware that this is holding you back in life? Or is it a comparison, issue? So,
okay,
yeah,
that's cool.
I
That's
don't
cool. Okay, so this is going to be more of a gender specific question.
Okay.
So a lot of women feel like their journey is harder or difficult than others. How often do you hear that in your work, and what's some ways that you work around that or help them with that?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is, I didn't really intend to go back to this, but it really is a biblical issue to me, where in the garden when, Eve took the fruit and then Adam agreed, and then we were essentially received our consequences for that. There's a verse that says Eve's desire would be for her husband, and that really is not sexual, unfortunately. That is more like, I want to be in the man's place. And so it's this inner drive to be everything to everybody and take over even what the man was designed for. And then we do that, and then we've got to do our role and his role, and that's just not going to happen. That's just too much. And so almost back to that, being in your lane and knowing what is yours and what isn't, and learning too. And this is just, there's a book called Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti. It's a very old book, but it talks about women's minds are always going, and everything's connected to everything else. And a man's mind is like, you're in work, and you come home, and if you're not home yet, then you're still in work, and you're not going to transfer over to that mindset. And so having grace for the male mind, having appreciation for it, and learning to communicate, like, hey, when husband comes home, I've had a long day with the kids and I could really use 30 minutes to go be by myself. Are you at a place where you could handle things for 30 minutes while I go? And instead of being, what I did was home with the kids all day, husband come home, irritated, mad, bitter, and like he's confused, I'm confused why he's confused, but I'm not using my words. I'm not saying what I need. And so I'm expecting him to interpret my unspoken words, and then it just leads to a lot of frustration, because he doesn't do things the way, I do, and he doesn't perceive in the way I perceive. And so learning to use your words, trying not to usurp that authority that the man is given, and then honoring how he is created. I have no idea if that's what you were looking for at all, but just, really learning like the value of your lane, the value of your role, the value of your place, and the beauty of it too. Like we get to create life, like we get to be the ones that see things that other people don't see. And so kind of flipping that script on I have to I get to. And that's there's a lot of like thought ladder work. There's a lot of perception work that goes into that. Probably in my longer programs. Can't get into that probably in 6 weeks.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
But yeah.
How do you help people distinguish between acknowledging something that's injustice or something that they're perceiving as wrong that's happened to them, without becoming just kind of trapped by resentment?
Yeah. This actually, I'm going to plug Palm House a little bit. So I do a little bit of work for Palm House, and it's a trauma recovery group for women on Thursdays at noon. And we talk a lot about this because there's significant, traumas or problems that you have, and you can't ignore that, but you also can't let that define the rest of everything. And so when we are balanced in our thinking, because our initial reaction is probably not going to be balanced. It's going to be more emotional rather than rational. So we have to get from our amygdala. So when we hear about an injustice, what happens is our fight, flight, or freeze comes out, and we're gonna make them pay. We're gonna get justice. That may or may not be what we need to do. We need to allow our brain to travel from the amygdala to our prefrontal cortex, where the logic is, where the rationality is, and we do that through breath work, and then they can look at it, more, and I say more reasonably. Sometimes you feel like injustice needs to be dealt with without as much reason, but you're going to make more progress if you're level-headed about it. That's one thing my husband talks a lot about, is kind of the stoicism and the rationality and things like that. And so learning my place in it has to come with a little bit of pause. Rarely ever is my first instinct going to be as healthy as if I were to just pause a minute and think through it a little bit more.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, I think we're rounding out. What is something that's giving you a lot of hope right now?
Man, I am excited in our world that we are starting to be able to have these conversations, where mental health is looked at, where practices are looked at. There's a lot of information out there, and so you can get overwhelmed with the information. And so still, I just say, go back to stillness. And if stillness is not accessible to you, maybe it's because you're functioning out of that sympathetic system, and you don't know how to calm your brain down. That's where I can help. But I'm hopeful that we have information, and I'm hopeful that there's a lot of people out there wanting to work one-on-one with people. And so I feel like almost any problem you have, you can probably find solutions to it. Whereas, kind of in that COVID era, it was like the only help we knew how to get was from counselors, and they're just overwhelmed. So having more access and some healing modalities like that excites me too. There's counselors, there's coaches, there's healing frequencies, there's exercise programs, there's nutrition, and finding a good balance of that is gonna probably lead you to the best whole version of yourself that you wanna be. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last one, what's something that you were working on yourself for this year?
I am working on myself. I have a little word for the year, and my word is unexpected, which is kind of a little bit like, ooh, it could go either way. But for me, that is learning to be flexible and really work with the ebb and flow and not having to have control over the situation, being more able to be balanced more continually, like continually balanced, so that whatever happens, good or bad, I can go with the flow with it a little bit more. So yeah.
How can people get in touch with you or follow you or begin to work with you?
Yeah, so I have a Facebook group called Breathe With Me, a Behold Community. So that's a way. I have a website called beholdbreath.com. It is under construction, so but I do have a contact form on there. So it needs reworked, but yeah, you can contact me there and find me on Facebook at Behold Breath. And yeah, I would love to see if there's any needs that I could help people meet.
Awesome.
So,
thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.